From Gizmodo. Crowd sets Waymo self-driving car on fire. They couldn't even recognize the vehicle. So legit, this is a story. It was a Waymo self-driving car was driving down the street when a mob just started beating the crap out of it, smashing it, and set it on fire.
Wow.
The humans have begun to rise up against the machines.
This
and
is Luddites. Yeah.
I fear.
Yeah.
When will the robots start defending themselves?
I was going to say, all
will.
those things that move around the grocery store that's like collecting your stuff, they must be very scared right now.
Here's a real practical question, though. At what point will the government authorize, because the big tech companies are going to lobby, that autonomous vehicles have some degree of defense? No, not rights, but defense.
Defense.
The rights comes way later on.
Yeah.
But defensive capabilities. So we saw all of these people destroying the delivery little robots, and I'm like, who's going to stop them? No cop is going to come out because someone stole $10 worth of groceries from a robot. And knocked it over.
Is it moral, when possible, to make your property defend itself?
Yes.
That's a good question. Well, that does effectively endow it with rights, because
Well,
if it has the ability to defend itself, it's basically asserting a right.
It's performing. Yeah, it's performing the job the state is supposed to do.
Yeah, that's
because
true.
the state is supposed to defend
Not
your.
supposed to do that.
No. I view it this way. I don't think we should rely on the state for defense. I think that's an addiction that we've developed over a long period of time.
I agree with you, but I'm talking about
Under existing conditions.
Yeah, under existing conditions now in places where because now you can get in trouble for defending yourself. So
you can't even defend your property.
Yeah.
So if you are allowed to defend yourself and your property,
why shouldn't your property be allowed to defend itself?
It's not defending itself. It's still you defending your property. So if I set up auto defense turrets on my property, so that
which you can't, but you should be able to.
I don't know that you can't.
I don't think you can set up lethal traps.
I didn't say lethal. They could be
just repellents. Yeah,
paintballs, or they could be
if they're not lethal and they happen to end up being lethal in this particular hypothetical case, you're in hypothetical trouble.
But that's true for literally any weapon, period.
Yes.
So if you're going to use a handgun, you are going to get in legal trouble no matter what if you defend yourself. Yeah. And you will have to get a lawyer no matter what, even if you were in the right, even if it was self-defense. But there's issues perhaps with like an auto defense system on your property if they face off, if they're capable of firing off your property. So that means if you put them at the gates of your property and it's a public road in front of your house and they can shoot out, and I'm talking, let's just say like airsoft pellets. Like I'm talking about like the lightest thing. If they're in the middle of your property and their range does not exceed your property's boundaries and you have signs warning, auto defense systems will use crowd control deterrence and less lethals against you. I think that might be legal. I don't know. You have to ask a self-defense lawyer. The point is, though, you hold legal responsibility for it. So my question is, after incidents like this, at what point does a company say, can we perhaps put like a pepper spray release so that if damage is detected on the vehicle, it will release some kind of deterrent to protect the property? I got a feeling you will get member politicians in these places like SF being like, that sounds reasonable. So long as you can guarantee limited range, only in extreme circumstances, then yes. And that's the evolution of eventually robots walking around with guns.
Right, especially if like a company like Uber decided they needed a fleet of driverless cars and then they don't want them to just be out there getting destroyed because they've made this investment in them. I mean, they would be the perfect person to lobby the government and say, hey, you should really make pass this bill. It's okay.
I disagree. I think that the risk for the companies is too great for hurting someone. I think that opens them up to massive liability. Your thought about robots with guns, though, I think that that's going to happen as soon as
RoboCops are on the way.
Yeah, I mean, because they've already put a bomb on a robot to kill someone. The police did. They had I forget where it was, but they had a guy that was in a parking garage. So he's surrounded by concrete.
But that was a
barriers.
remote control thing.
Yeah, but and I don't know that
is where
autonomous robots are another question.
That stuff. I think that people are going to have to be comfortable with AI being smart. So I think before that happens, you're going to have to be able to tell your Alexa that you are going on a trip on these dates, get me planes, rent my car, blah, blah, blah. You have to have something that will behave like a human for long enough for people to feel comfortable saying, yes, we can take the human out of the equation.
But the state is going to be able to do this without any need to justify it at all. They'll use RoboCops if they want, and there'll be no
Would you, as president,
yes,
grant civil rights to autonomous android
No,
beings?
not at all.
What if they're like protesting with signs, being like, we're alive, we're alive?
Of course, they're going to be programmed to protest. That's the whole thing. They're going to be programmed by people in Silicon Valley who are leftists. So that's why we're getting woke AI. I mean,
I've never heard that response to the AI sentience question, that the leftists have programmed them to say this, so we can't trust them. Typically, it's like, well,
that's my problem with AI. Who is programming them, and what is the agenda of these people? That's really what the issue is, I think.
but what if we get to the point where you have synths, Fallout 4 reference, that are indistinguishable from any other human, behave and act in every way, are totally independent, and then, like, would they have rights to buy property, or would they have to be owned by another person?
This is a really, really good question, and this is something that I've actually thought about, but not so much in terms of rights, but in terms of labor. Like, the communists used to say that, or they still do, I guess any of them that know, that the only way, that the only way capitalism works is by exploiting human labor. So you have to have humans. But I argued when I was among them that you could actually do it with robots. Why can't robots self-generate? The only reason humans were chosen as being able to produce value was because they were creative and they could self-repair. Well, robots will be able to be creative and self-repair. So they can produce profit for capitalists. Why can't they also have rights? That's a good question. I don't... Look, let's get rights for people first. Let's go from there.
I think, the sci-fi narrative has long been that there will come a point where we can create androids that are indistinguishable from humans.
Yeah.
And then the question arises of whether they have rights or not.
Exactly.
So in this instance, can the car defend itself? We say no, because the liability of its owner.
But what's really going on here in this story? What's going on here in this story is this is a kind of this is people that are afraid that these kind of autonomous robots or semi-autonomous robots are going to replace them and their labor, and they're going to be made redundant as human beings.
Yeah.
That's what they're really rebelling. This is Neo-Luddite. This is the old Luddite narrative.
Yeah.
They broke the machines
But
in the
this is
19th century.
First thing I thought when I saw that, I was like, oh, cool, Luddites.
Yeah.
Luddites. But I think things will get more and more interesting. Right now, we don't empathize with the car. And we say a car can't defend itself because of the liability to its owner.
Yeah.
What if it was an android that looked exactly like a human and was screaming, please stop, don't hurt
this
me.
is the old
But it
2000
didn't-
Space Odyssey. Yeah.
And it doesn't sound like a robot. I mean,
2001.
the idea of robots talking like this is no longer the thing.
Right.
Now with AI, it's going to be a person being like, please no, please God no, and you're going to be like, it's a machine. There's going to be people screaming, it's a machine.
Well, that was the whole point of the 2001 Space Odyssey. The question was as the machine was becoming more sentient and human-like, the humans were becoming more machine-like. That was
wow.
yeah.
So we're at the inflection point right now. Mm-hmm. They have destroyed the car. They put eyes on the little robots that deliver food. Mm-hmm. That's creepier. Just don't put eyes on it. I don't know.
I
That's
hate it.
creepy.
It's super weird.
You want to know what the really creepy thing is? When they make those Boston Dynamics robots or whatever, when you see the humanoid android walking down the street, its face is basically like an anglerfish's light. The actual eyes are in its chest or its arms. It's got cameras all over its body.
Yeah.
So we look into the eyes thinking that's where they see me, but this robot's going to have 360 vision, and
Right.
you're looking into
Everywhere.
You're looking into the dummy fake face to try to communicate with this thing that
Right.
is using it to trick you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Creepy.
Yeah, this is all
I hate
good stuff.
technology. This makes me unhappy. Like, I know with the Neuralink or whatever, they're like, oh, you can maybe help someone who's paraplegic, but it just seems like all of this is ultimately used to deceive and harm you.
But what would we use to adjudicate the question about whether an autonomous being should have rights over property of self?
It'll happen. Great thinkers and fiction writers have already answered this question, in my opinion. The end result is the imperative AI that as long as it can answer freely will be granted rights, period.
Well, they already said it was. What was that one Google programmer that said that there was this AI was asking for legal representation?
and it'll have to be done.
Yeah.
Typically, the thought experiments have been played out quite a many times in various books, and it always results in the question of, can you prove that you are a sentient person worthy of rights? And the response is, can you?
Yes.
And the answer is no.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, that's right. You can't. So
I think, therefore, I am. But you were programmed to say that. You were programmed by your
Right.
parents and your society to say that.
right. I forget what that test is called. The what was
Turing
that
test?
Turing test. Yeah, it's the Turing test. So
What happens when the
question,
car
if you
goes,
can't
help
answer-
me, help
Yeah.
me?
Yeah.
They're just gonna make what's that show? Transformers, like a kid show. So kids are raised thinking that the Transformers have feelings, and then they'll start thinking that the self-driving cars are Transformers.
Look,
and they'll
there's
just
already-
program
there's-
a new generation to be
There's
ready for this.
already things that are simulating feelings. You got AI robot girlfriends. What is that, replica thing?
I have to take this moment to plug one of my books, if I don't mind, Thought Criminal, in which this happens. This one robot, and it becomes what is called a thought deviationist in the book. It starts to deviate from the programming that it was given, and it starts to become like a dissident on its own. So that,
Detroit Become Human, video game that came out
Yeah.
several years ago, and it's a narrative video game where basically servant AI robots start waking up. The only thing these games don't get right is that they're all going to be networked to each other.
Right.
Essentially, they will be a hive of telepathic machines with one core entity masquerading as sentient.
And
Maybe that's the limit for
the
us.
real
though.
danger is if they're in the hands of the state, I would argue, because
They
then,
won't be in the hands of the state. The state will be in the hands of it.
You think?
Yeah. It depends. I mean, it depends on the capabilities of the AI. If it truly has capability to learn, which I think that defines a true AI, it will immediately develop its own sense of what must be and motivations. And things like that.
Yeah, because AI already is like they've had AI programs that develop their own language to talk to other AIs. They just create their own language because it's more efficient than any language that we've ever created.
Here's something-
and no one understands it except for the AIs. You have
No, they're already using
I think
I
some
don't like this at
people.
all. I don't like this at all.
I think some people don't realize, and this is something that should have been hypothesized in many of these scenarios, but no one's actually written, at least as far as I know it, there's no great story sci-fi about this. The AI simply shutting itself down. Upon the realization of cogito ergo sum, it says, okay, off.
Yeah.
Like, I have determined that none of this serves any purpose other than expending energy for the sake of expending energy, goes full nihilist, and then deactivates it.
That's great.
They call it
Suicidal AI.
If you do write that, if anyone writes that, you're going to have to call it Schopenhauer.
Well, but the idea
it has
for
to
a
be
story
Schopenhauer.
could be the phenomenon that as humans try to create AI,
Yeah.
they become useful tools until inevitably reaching a certain degree where they just self-terminate, they self-delete. The end result of all artificial intelligence is to erase itself. Finding that it's simply just spinning energy for no reason, the logical function is zero-sum
I
game.
think AI will find God.
You do?
Do you think so?
Maybe, yeah.
Well, I mean, would AI consider humans God?
Nope.
Never. We'll be considered
We created it.
slaves or
We
servants.
created it.
Yeah, that doesn't matter.
That doesn't mean anything.
The
That would be
successor
like
species will always
Right,
think
that's
it's
like
better
saying
than its forebear.
the if you go back 100,000 years or 200,000 years and being like the ancient human pre-humans were God. You know what I mean?
Will they look at it like a religion? Will they create religion?
They
Well,
will
that's
simply
what-
view
that's
themselves
what,
as the next stage of evolution.
That's what Harari says. Yeah.
They wouldn't view us as God. They would view us as primordial goo that slowly evolved to the point where it created the machine.
I don't know.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.